Absolutely.
Welcome once again to Prince George's Community College. My name is Dr. Iyelli Ichile, and I am a Black Studies and History professor here. I run the African American Studies Institute, and I am so excited to be here with our three esteemed panelists, including our playwright, Psalmayene 24 on the end there. This was wonderful. And this is actually my third time seeing this play, so I'm so excited that it's now at my home institution. But what we're gonna do is I'm gonna have the pleasure of having kind of a dialogue, ask our panelists some questions. I'm gonna first have each of them kind of briefly introduce themselves, although you've seen them in the program. And then after I kind of maybe pull out some themes, some questions from our panelists, I'd like to give you all an opportunity to dialogue with them as well. Is that okay? Good. Okay. I'm gonna just take that as a yes. So we'll start with Brooke, and we'll work our way down to the end, and just introduce yourself, and we'll get started.
Good. My name is Brooke Kidd. I'm the director of Joe's Movement Emporium, and proud to produce and manage this show. I have to say thank you. So many people that are here tonight have made it possible to bring this work forward, including in the audience are a number of the voices, the stories you hear on stage. And I'm incredibly proud to share this history and to engage our community around it.
Thank you.
I'm Tony Thomas, director, choreographer for the project. It's a fabulous experience. This is our second round of this production. Definitely stepped it up a lot this time and tapped a bit more into the artistry, but more so the conversation, and trying to really push that point, and that's what we're going to start doing right now. So we'll see what you guys got from the piece and your thoughts and feelings and what we were able to stir with you.
Hi, I'm Psalmayene 24, playwright, and let's just give it up again for the cast. I mean, the cast and the director, producers, and I'd like to just say that we actually have a couple of the descendants that I interviewed in the audience. We have Jeff Tigner in the house, who you saw a version of on stage, and Chase Chester also in the house, who you also saw a version of on stage as well.
I thought I met Julia.
Julia Rose is also here, so please give it up for Julia Rose, who you also saw in Avatar on stage.
It's so exciting. It must be so surreal to see yourself and your life in a play. So welcome. All right, I'm gonna just jump right into, I guess, the beginnings of my thinking and feeling. And it is not lost on me that we are sitting here in this somewhat quiet theater space while a protest is happening a few miles up the street about the current state of affairs in our country. And the first time I saw this play, I came away feeling mostly hope and positive, and like there's a way forward for us to study history together in a way that is meaningful. And today, right now, this time, the play feels unfinished. Mm-hmm. Like there's a new, more intense conversation that needs to happen. Just, can you respond to that? Am I the only one in that feeling right now?
Yeah, you've hit the nail right on the head, and I feel the same way. Like now, I feel like this is part one. Mm-hmm. This conversation is actually part two, and then there needs to be a part three, which I think is another sort of response, speaking to people about now our current moment, but the part one, which is the play, I think sets up everything else, because everything that we see in the play is part of the reason why I think we're in the predicament we're in now. That is sort of, that's the piece of the puzzle that people need to hear. People need this history. If you don't get this history, if you don't ask the questions like Julia said, then you're sort of existing in this world where You feel like, you can do anything and all, and your actions seem to be ahistorical, seem to just exist outside of history. So there's that.
Absolutely, I like the way you framed that. There's a part one and part two, and we're all a part of part two. But then there's definitely a part three. Yeah. Brooke, Tony?
And these stories represent the resilience that has happened from the families we get to hear about. And these moments in history where people overcame incredible challenges. And it gives me great comfort to remember these moments and to maybe be guided by this strength, and to uncover more about the pieces that make sense to us and help us stay anchored in fighting racism and untangling law from opportunity.
But to add to, your thought of, where we are now, at one point you felt hope, and now we feel less hope, a little lost, a little confused and chaotic. I agree, Psalm and I were just talking about that. We've talked about it as a creative team as well when we started back. And when he started doing this, it's 18, right, 2018, about that time, yeah. That was different, that many years ago, a couple bubbles of issues. Now in the current time, you got about 50 different things, and like Brooke is saying, this is the base of it, this is part of it, and we have to acknowledge, Psalm brought it up as well, we have to acknowledge this content, this conversation, because it is a part of the reason why we're dealing with what we're dealing with, and we can't ignore it, that mindset of, do you live in a bubble or are you woke?
Right. And I think the awareness, the wokeness that you're referencing is a really important point, because I think one of the major takeaways that I got from this is the power of storytelling. History is telling one story. We had a group of people, past and present, who were talking about slavery and its afterlives. And again, not to belabor the point, but we're living in a moment where storytelling is suppressed, and it's on its way. It's ramping up. I'm sitting here day to day wondering how long I'm going to be able to do my job and teach what I teach, which is history, and how long we'll be able to do this and have productions like this that are funded and that are allowed in public spaces. So the power of storytelling and the fact that that storytelling may need to take new forms, take on old forms even, within families and communities is something that struck me. But what, for each of you, because you are storytellers through movement, through writing, through drama, through production, and through being a resource and creating the structures and building institutions around storytelling, what's the power of storytelling for you?
Realism. Naturalism and realism. I believe in the truth and owning that and showing that. We have to censor sometimes. We have to be considerate, which is normal. But for this round, we definitely wanted to dig a bit more into their words, the sincerity of the stories and the history and the moms, and understanding how far back that goes and how it could be groomed and made a part of your mentality and your physicality. And is that a choice, or is it something that becomes genetic? Like I said, when do you wake up about it? So storytelling is very strong this time around in hitting certain points. What was each person talking about from Chase's experience, Jeff and Sean and Will and Julia, all of them? Like, what were they trying to say? What do they live from? Look at their journey from the time we introduced them to the time they finished in that movement sequence as a collective sort of rainbow tribe, a collection of different people and thoughts and skin colors unified. We've seen many examples of that, but we don't always follow it or try to practice it. And sometimes a lot of artists, we've had conversations where we feel like this just becomes a show or something to do. And when are we going to make it real? When are we really taking action? That's what we're trying to do. So when you mention, is your job secure? For being a historian for us, that's bitter. That's hard, in realness. And we have to be real about that point that you made. So that was a direction, for a lot of the artistic and creative choices this time. This go-round is not just approaching the verbatim theater and documentary style we did, but let's be real and drive the points. What's not being said? What's not being asked? And ask you. So those of you who stayed, we'd like you to ask us back, and give your feedback back on that.
Yeah, the potency and power of storytelling is certainly something that stood out even more this time than in the previous production, and this idea of really democratizing storytelling. You don't need to be a professional artist to tell a story. Everybody has a story to tell. Even the way this play was created, it was created by speaking to people who were telling me their stories, personal stories, some stories that were passed down within their family, and then I just shared the stories they told me, basically. So I think that's one thing that we have to really hold on to, even if it's not done in a theater, but within your families, in your home, making sure that you keep the stories of your family alive, I think is one way to just empower yourself.
I mean, the stories engage our mind and our senses at many levels. I wear a necklace every show to be in solidarity with Ellen Jean, because that is such an important story for me, and it's such a granular way of experiencing racism, and I really get that because we have brought her story forth, and I feel we've. Tony and Psalm have brought these stories together for us to really understand the mechanisms of racism on such a typical day. The small things that build up to the really large things. And then each of the voices have such wisdom to share, and that's better than the most recent Atlantic or Washington Post article. And it hits your heart. Jeff drops these amazing pieces of wisdom about law that all the Atlantic writers are talking about, and the humanity that's brought forth from each of them. And I have to do a particular thank you to Chase in sharing the story about his grandfather and the church in you. It's probably one of the dearest moments that we all can see about love.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Diving a little deeper into the actual techniques and strategies of storytelling that you both used in this play, I wanted to know, because this is my first time speaking with you, Tony, about as a choreographer, because I have questions. I love so. My daughter actually goes to Baltimore School for the Arts for dance. And so I'm always looking at movement as storytelling. It's so important. And the first time around, I was like, what are they doing? Is the dance in alignment with the story? Because I almost felt like that opening choreography was like the whole story being told or something like that, like a summary almost. And I wasn't sure until I heard the whip crack. And I was like, oh, yeah. So just tell us what you want us to know that we maybe missed about the movement and how it tells the story.
There's so much. I mean, from a general directing focus to narrowing down to when movement would be incorporated. Psalm loves me to do movement. He said, this is a movement piece. And I was like, well, okay. But I mean, and not to say that the talent I have, brilliant. Oh my gosh, if you guys could see the journey from version 1 to this 2.0, as we call it, they're amazing. But I believe in putting movement on actors and artists that is doable, right? Mm-hmm. They can actually they can tell the story. So that's first and foremost. But story-wise, I wanted to give a recap of history and entrapment, slavery, taking and chaining up and forcing and all of that. So you're right, that was the montage of what that was, that initial historical experience of just how we got to this land. Okay. To the point where we're all on the land, and we're here, just commingling. But that is that initial story you saw, which in their first version was live on stage. They performed it. And then we decided, when I was able to incorporate more technology and media, I decided to film it, and just try that experience and form of it, which was interesting. But that was the go-round on this run of it, was to try different things and to engage the audience, especially since we were focused on schools coming to see this round. So with schools coming and, all the youth are like this on the device and they're just on their phones on an iPad or something, I'm like, what's visually stimulating? What do we need to do to keep them engaged or to make them want to ask questions or to, walk away with something? A lot of times youth are not going to get everything unless you're kind of attached to the sort of the world that we're in, the arts and entertainment or something, but you hope that they leave with at least one little thought or they remember a section and what does that certain scene, story, or section do for them. So as you can see, it was a lot this time around. And then, Brooke was able to get us in PGCC with this wonderful, wonderful venue. And I was able to fly things in and kind of create more of a world for the actors to play in, which is very important, versus more so just a direct verbatim delivery of lines in their stories. We experimented more with interaction. If you saw the first version, it was very direct to the audience, first telling their stories, but I wanted to show how conversation can happen. I also structured that very separately with black and white conversation. And you see them kind of get closer and closer and start to mingle amongst each other and talk to each other or share experiences with each other. And, of course, nothing is going to be negative, but the positives of supporting someone and just being quiet, just listening, letting someone vent, that understanding in that capacity. So yeah, a lot of different things were tried in this round, but I think it was successful. We did a good job.
Did you choose the chains?
Huh?
The chains in the.
So our scenic designer, Shatoya,
Okay.
yes,
That was
same
dramatic.
designer from before, who created a proscenium for us at Joe's, but was able to really do her thing here. And we had different ideas of whether we were going to go for a family tree on stage or keep depicting that digitally, but we felt with the simplicity of it, which worked a lot. Giving an environment, textures, fabrics, the weight of the chains, and what does that mean? How many understood what the chains meant? You got it? I don't think it's pretty much. I think it's pretty obvious, but yes, the chains were definitely a consistent effect that we wanted to use, and when they came in and out, and who sees them. Julia, right? I kept everyone's story on their own path, whether it was just a personal story, a professional, historical, lawmaker, keeping them on that journey and that path. Therefore, their world always involved that. And I'm bringing up Julia because that was a big thing with Adrian, always saying, you're always overhearing, you're listening to something, you're taking notes, you're finding yourself. And when you start from the beginning to the end, by the time you get to the end of the show, you have something to say, and she says it. Unfortunately, I don't think there will be an end to racism. And that leaves a lot of people with thought and question of, is that true? Will there ever be an end to it? You tell me. Because physically, I don't think so. Actively, I don't think so. And we have to be real about what we say and how we feel about it.
Yeah, in terms of movement, thinking about enslavement, which was so much about restricting the body and restricting movement. So in this piece, it made sense to me to really free the body and use movement as a primary storytelling device. And then, we're doing it at Joe's Movement Emporium. So it's like, well, we have to, incorporate dance in some way. And then just my personal history with dance. Dance was my first love. And then having worked with Tony a bunch of times, knowing that he's just a masterful storyteller, particularly when it comes to incorporating movement with plays. So I thought movement felt like the right medium to balance and undergird the piece.
Awesome. And then I guess the next theme that really came out for me, and something I'm always looking for, is about the meaning of ancestors and ancestry. We have people in this play who are seeking their ancestry, seeking their identity through their ancestry, through learning about their ancestors. I felt like there was a spiritual element to the play, but I didn't want to just kind of like superimpose my own thinking on the play because I'm always looking for it, but the mother's mother's mother and these institutions that we build, because, you know, there are really smart people, and I'm paraphrasing, that say, like, slavery is like white American history. How we survived it is Black American history. And so I constantly heard like the invocation of like ancestors and traditions, but like the law or the slave system interrupting, other institutions interrupting these institutions. And so, and then even when some of the white characters found their ancestors who were doing positive things, there would always be like you know, like the Duckett family is the mixed bag of good and evil, right? Or positive and negative, pro and anti. What is the meaning of ancestors here? What was your thinking?
Yeah.
Because even with you, I know when you structured it, I mean, because again, Psalm did these interviews in the pandemic, top of it, on Zoom, constant interview. If you can imagine, like a 2-hour interview per person. Then he went back and structured it into what you saw. A couple drafts, but ultimately creating a dialogue. So that was most amazing to me. It was really just getting this script. Like, this is set up. It's already done. Dialogue, characters, points. But at the same time, there were stories, right? So we think about Black culture, Latin culture, where we have storytellers and griots and who we are and how we carry that forth. And that's why it was important for April and Ellen Jean. Their stories played out a certain way. They always told a story. They had a very specific lighting, very specific environment, and a very specific delivery. Talking to someone, getting a reaction, just venting, telling stuff, you know. And then you have Sean, Will, and Julia, who come with the facts, the realization, the history on a positive side, because they've done good work, right? There are people who do good work. It is not all negative. We know that. Here we are. As few as there are, you know, we should have this place packed with great conversation. But I wanted to be specific with that so you would see storytelling. And I'm glad you picked up on that with April and Ellen Jean. And I hope that came across and you all were able to absorb really the feeling of it too. Not just telling, oh, this is what my mom did, and there were chickens and this and that, and he drove around and got everything dirty, but the feeling of it. And that's why we created a hot spot on the stage, physically, structuring, giving you an insight to the directing process. Every time they came down, it was in your face. That was the intent. To give it to you, to deliver it to you, to see you, eye contact. That's exactly what that was. And they stepped back in the box, our playing space, to tell stories and to play things out and to dramatize it and to do movement. So it was really important with storytelling. That was a key thing this round, and I knew we had to push it. So I hope it came across. Yeah. I hope it was delivered.
Yeah, and in terms of this idea of ancestry, ultimately with this piece, you know, I'm just really trying to move beyond the binary idea of ancestry or some sort of split idea and getting us all on the same page and all connected with the same ancestry. You know, enslavement is part of our ancestry. It's American history. And that was something that I really thought about as I was creating the piece and thinking about like how best to sort of land that idea, even if it's not like explicitly said. That's even, you know, with the casting. You have, you know, 2 Black actors, 2 white actors, you know, to sort of show that, okay, there's some sort of equally shared burden or equally shared responsibility of our history. And then even thinking of the ancestry of the storytelling, like thinking about artists like Anna DeVere Smith and Tozaki Shange, and thinking of them as sort of artistic ancestors that now we're sort of a part of. So that idea of ancestry is something that's deep, but ultimately I think it's about really getting to the point where we're looking at everybody as part of our family. So if this piece can take us one step closer to that, then I think we've done our job.
Thank you for that, and I agree. I think this is extremely impactful. Brooke, my question is for you. One of the things that I really appreciated about this play is that it didn't just tackle race. It tackled gender, sexuality, class. Why did you feel this play was most important to support? What was the theme? What was the motivation? What is it about this play that you want people to take the most from? Or like, what is the motivating factor here for you?
I've always been motivated to just celebrate place. And I chose Prince George's County as my home. And the region has often disparaged Prince George's County. And I'm proud Prince Georgian. I've been here 30 years now. And I'm also proud of where I'm from, a small town in Indiana. And I've through the work at Joe's, I've come to see that when people connect to place and community and have belonging, that we come together with people power, and that we reinforce the ties that bind us. And I wanted to see our organization invest in work and artists and voices that represent that. And to get back into producing really high quality work. I'm really motivated to support professional theater in Prince George's County. We have so much talent here, and we need to see it and celebrate that. And I know you've got a fierce daughter who rehearses at Joe's after Baltimore School for the Arts. I just appreciate the history of this and the difficult history. I'm curious about that. I want to keep knowing more. To the power of storytelling, another favorite line, I've got a few favorite lines in this play, is brush history against the grain, as Julie so wisely says. I mean, it should be on one of the t-shirts. And I think that's just indicative of what we need to do now.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, and thank you for supporting the arts. Brooke is amazing, by the way. Okay, so I guess before we turn it over to the audience, because I know that you all have questions and comments, and I could go on talking about my own personal investment in this because it's brilliant. But I wanted to just ask for each of you to, I know you kind of shared with us, Tony, what you would have wanted people to kind of notice in the movement. What else, Psalm, do you want to take away from this that we may have missed? Is there something you want to highlight? And the same question for you, Brooke. I thought the place thing was brilliant because, it's PG County. I'm like, oh, Benjamin Tasker. I know that school. You know what I mean? It was great to feel locally connected. That was the thing that drew me in. But what else did we miss?
I don't know if we missed it, but just to reinforce that, enslavement and the history of slavery is with us today. And we have to deal with it. We have to heal from it, and that's one of the main ways that I think we're gonna redeem the soul of America, as John Lewis said. But I think, just being unafraid to grapple with that history and metabolizing the history in a way that brings us together as opposed to separates us. So that's ultimately, this play is about like bringing communities together and healing.
It was a powerful moment when you see Duckett and Jeff facing each other by the end, like, my family possibly owned your family. And that was like, for me, a metaphor of like what you were talking about. Like, we're going to have to confront this, and it's all of us. We have to do this together. So that was a really powerful message. What's your major takeaway?
I think it's the freedom making and how we learn about all the pathways to freedom that existed. And it wasn't just one thing. There was the overt work of, like, the abolitionists. The Quakers were incredibly active in that space. All of the freed people that lived in Maryland and the many ways that they achieved freedom in the 1800s. And then the freedom suits themselves, and the volume of Prince Georgians that experienced that is unique and I think defining of our community here. And then all of the underground work, that was also passing through our county. And it must have been just exciting. And I think it's still exciting. I want people to be excited that that existed and it happened here.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Ella Jean's people in that story was a fabulous example of, like, you have on one hand people going through the court system, but then you got people loading 73 people on a boat to like escape just on their own. We're not going to go through the courts. We're just going to get on this boat and hope for the best. So it was like all these different strategies. So it wasn't just about suing in the courts. It was like the backdrop is all the different methods. And I like that. I thought that was really important. And on top of that, you have the ways in which slavery re-traps people. You could get your freedom and then have it snatched back. And you can try this and sue in court, but the people still on the plantation might be sold and separated to pay for you wanting to get your freedom in the courts. Like, it's just, your freedom might entrap someone else in a different situation. It's just, it's this push-pull, and I feel like because we're in this moment of push-pull where things are being snatched back, it just hit different this time. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to be quiet. I would like to open it up to the audience if anybody has questions, comments, some feedback, some congratulations.
My name is Rob Duncan. I lived in Mount Rainier. I'm a longtime supporter of Joe's, and I've seen the play 4 times, and every time it got better. Wow. But this time, it was a quantum leap better. And so I just want to ask a comment on just one example that you can think of a change you introduced into this version of the play and how you got the idea and then followed through on incorporating it into the script. Because there's many different possibilities, but the one that just comes to your mind.
No. I am very much interested in TV and film. I was a child actor. They called us kids with cards, all your equity SAG after cards. So that's my heart. And the first version, I wanted to do the TV effect that you saw. To even go further, we wanted to use the shots across. So when they were all on stage, you would also see that. Always a limitation for somewhere. But I got that part in. So that's what was missing the first time that you didn't see, was really me being able to incorporate projections at the level that I'm wanting to do that I'm interested in technology and artistry in my development as a director. So that was the biggest thing, yeah. Thank you. Great, glad. I think it works for the youth too. We had our first school show today and they seemed to be engaged. They weren't all on their devices, so this was the device. It worked. Yeah.
Okay, this is going to probably be our last comment or question, and then you'll have to just catch our folks in the let out. And thank you so much. Go ahead.
I'm glad I got the last one. I just wanted to say there's this moment at the end, and this isn't a criticism, it's just how I feel, and I wanted to ask a question about it, in which, and forgive me, Will or Sean, the Southern judge, gives $1,000, and he's like, I can't do anything, but here's $1,000, and then she said, he took her and bought like a stove and something else. And I remember in that moment when it happened on stage as I'm watching it, I remember viscerally going, well, what the F is she supposed to do with $1,000, bro? Like, what's that? Like there was anger.
Of course.
And I was just curious. And of course that isn't the intention of that moment, but I just wanted to ask, what was it, both writing that moment as well as directing that moment, those confrontations when, history and modern times kind of, collide with each other. What was that process?
Yeah, and that's an actual account, for Ellen Jean. So, of course, you all realize that the actors are flip-flopping. They're playing multiple people. So Scott steps into that role to be Willie's grandson, in a sense.
Thornbush.
Thornbush. Willie is grandfather, sorry, her father, but Thornbush's grandson. So it's a simple gesture. And in the interview, she just brings it up as a, hey, you know, and years later, this is what happened. And, you know, he wasn't like his father, you know, his story. Where did his echo back to? So that was a sweeter, softer, just little things help, you know, a soft moment instead of, you know, everything being negative. So it was important to have, I think, the play go there to soften the thought. And I'm really happy someone put that there. But I didn't find it challenging at all to approach the scene, block it, you know, stage it. It was pretty easy because I got it. I understood what it was. But I hear you, Jeremy. I'm gonna call your name my brother. I know you. That's a good point, you know, because initially you're thinking like, what's $1,000 that's supposed to do for somebody? But where are they from?
Mississippi, and that was verbatim. And when I did the interview with her and she, you know, told me that part, she was gracious, she was appreciative, and she kept it in context. So, I mean, she knows that, you know, $1,000 is not $1 million, but it was in the spirit of what he gave it to her, I think is what she really keyed in on. And that was one thing that we wanted to also bring forth, like the spirit of it. Yes, it can, there's no dollar amount that really, it could be $1 billion. That's not enough, you know, yeah. But I think,
let it go.
Yes,
That's what she was basically saying.
it was that healing moment, you know.
Thank you. I didn't feel healing. I got angry too because I was like, this guy probably gave her this $1,000 and then thought and invoked the fact that the situation is now over. And he probably went and voted red. Like in my head, I'm thinking this is Mississippi. And he's like, hey, it's done. You know, like, don't complain anymore. Like, you got your $1,000, move on. And yet the legacy continues, right? So I'm with you. I feel you on that. But it is important, you know, to understand, like, in context and how it was received in that human moment that it meant something. So not to discount that either, of course. And that's the last word, everyone. Thank you so much again for staying with us for the dialogue, for supporting the play. Continue to support good work like this and continue the good work you do in your own lives. Thank you. Have a good night. Be safe. And thank you for coming to PGCC.